What's the scariest thing that's happened to you or someone you know on Halloween? When I was 5 or so, my parents purchased a piece of land from our neighbor whose house and yard were behind ours, basically making our backyard much larger. Part of that land included an old stone gazebo that dated back to around 1850. This was around 2000, so it was about 150 years old at the time. Our neighbor didn't have a ton of information on the gazebo. It predated her house and ours, which were built in the 1950s and 1930s, respectively. In fact, it predated the entire neighborhood. The oldest houses were generally from the 1910s-20s. And previously the area had been used as a military testing site for mustard gas and other things during WWI. It certainly seems odd that this big, approximately 400 square feet, gazebo was built basically in the middle of nowhere at that time, and also withstood the development of the surrounding area. Anyway, as soon as my parents bought the land, I started having horrible nightmares every night. In the nightmares, I would be standing in the yard at night and looking into the dark gazebo. I could just barely make out all of these pained faces in the darkness, as if people were sitting on the floor of the gazebo screaming and crying. Sometimes the fireplace in there would be lit, and I'd see someone jump into it. It freaked my mom out in particular because she was convinced I could sense things. My mom is a legit white-collar professional with no spiritual background. But she still thinks this about me to this day despite my disagreement, LOL. The nightmares were vivid though, and it's actually making me feel a little sick as I remember them. All of that said, you asked specifically about Halloween, which is where this gets weird. My parents started putting a pool in the yard, and also decided to change the flooring and add structural reinforcements to the gazebo. I kid you not, on Halloween itself, the people working on the yard were excavating behind the gazebo and under the flagstone flooring. They found human bones and a few large stones with names carved into them. We could not find any records on the names on the stones. The people that dug up the bones were understandably freaked out. The police came and were basically like, huh, weird, nothing else ever came of it, but the nightmares did eventually stop. Not technically Halloween night, but a few days before Halloween. I was 1718 at the time, and there usually isn't much to do in our town at the age except go to this old abandoned factory that we used to go to all the time to explore and pretty much kill time. Well, me and a couple buddies decided to go, and for once it was still kinda light out when we went. We did the usual cross the road into the bushes, then make a beeline to the first building. Well, this day, it smelled like absolute death inside. And we all commented about it and continued being a bunch of dudes climbing on things, breaking bottles, being loud act. Then out of nowhere we started hearing loud bangs and almost whimper-like sounds, so we shut up and started listening and started to go towards the noise. Well, we rounded a corner and found a homeless guy on the ground with heavy blood loss to his legs, and we immediately tried to help him, and he kept asking us if it's gone or if IT is still around. We immediately called 911, and I took off my belt for a tourniquet. His legs looked like they went through a meat grinder, is all I can describe it. We figured rescue would have a hell of a time getting to where we were at, so we all decided to just scoop him up and carry him out to the road. Well, in the panic and the struggle of carrying this big guy, I happen to look behind us and up to my right and seen the largest hairy black creature standing in a doorway on 2 feet, and the sun was just hitting it right, and I seen the man's blood on its face and chest. We don't have bears where I'm located, and the only way I can describe it as is it was Bigfoot, but I don't believe in a Bigfoot living in a suburb of a large city. Never knew whatever happened to that guy. The police never said anything, never asked us questions or nothing. I lived on the last street before you came to nothing but undeveloped land, wilderness, whatever. No trees, just sagebrush, but we have been known to have a few rogue animals sometimes. I was 15F and coming home from a friend's house. It was about 11 at night, super dark, and not many street lights. The only street light on my street is the one on the corner of the street, and then my house is another 6 houses down. Now there was a little inlet on the corner that went to the wilderness, almost like an old camping site. It essentially made the corner a T. I have to pass the corner light to get home, so I'm approaching the light. I can see it up ahead, and I'm not really paying attention. Then the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. At this point, I'm super close to the light. I look around, and I spot it. Just outside the light on the other side in the inlet is a very large mountain lion. I almost crap my pants. I'm too close to it to back away. Its eyes are looking straight at me, so I know it's seen me, and the only way to safety is through the light. I would have to skirt around the light on my side, and hopefully it stays on the inlet side. I keep walking deliberately and slowly while never taking my eyes off of the mountain lion. As I'm walking towards her, she never moves, just watching me. When I get past the point of being able to see her and keep walking forward, I slowly swivel and walk backwards. As I'm backing up, it takes a step forward, eyes on me like it's going to stalk me. Oh shit, I can't outrun this thing. I just keep stepping backwards slowly. She stays put, but only for so long. Every 5 to 6 of my steps, she takes a step forward. I know she's getting ready to pounce. When I get to the edge of our yard, I turn and dash to the door. I ran for my life, knowing she was going to pick up the chase the moment I turned. I know she did because I heard her paws thud after me. My heart was pounding. Luckily, the door was unlocked. I ran inside and slammed it shut, leaning on the door. I breathe deep, hard, and heavy, then look inside the living room. My parents and older brother are staring at me. I tell them to look outside. They do, and she's stalking in our yard. We all watch her from the safety of our window. She was a very beautiful creature, but I never want to be that close to one in the wild again. I've had 2 other close encounters with mountain lions, but that was the closest and scariest. It was also the only encounter where I was alone. When I was 17, I lived with my friend and her family, who pretty much took me and let me stay there in exchange for babysitting. Well, my friend, her 8-year-old little cousin, and little cousin's best friend, who was also 8, went walking to get some face makeup for Halloween, and to get to the Walgreens they had to cross a major street. They didn't take the crosswalk, instead they jaywalked. Well, the car in the lane closest to them stopped, but her cousin and little friend went ahead, and the very next lane the car didn't stop. Her cousin flew, I think, 17 feet, ruptured her spleen, concussion, tons of road rash. She had to stay in the hospital for a couple weeks. Her best friend got it way worse. She was put into a coma because of brain swelling and trauma from the accident. That was an awful Halloween. Both girls are fine and have kids of their own now. I was working as a bartender at a hotel that a flight attendant was murdered in room 354 at about a year before the incident. Anyhow, it was close to closing time when a very small woman comes into bar and tells me she needed my help. It seems the fire panel is showing an alarm in room 354, which had been somewhat cleaned and left vacant since the murder. So the 2 of us go up the elevator and start heading down the long L-shaped corridor. As we round the corner, we can see papers had been shoved under the door from inside the room with help me written on them, so the manager puts her master key in the lock and opens the door to pitch black in the room, and we hear, "Thank God, you have finally come." We both instinctively jump back and then see one of our maintenance workers stroll out the door. It seems maintenance had been using the room for storage, and once he went inside the door, the knob was broken off on the inside. There were no lights or phone in the room, so he held his lighter up to the fire alarm. Edit. For more information on the murder and killer, Google search Nancy Ludwig. Last year, I was dog-sitting for my parents while they were on holiday. They live in a very rural countryside village in an old barn conversion, and I hate staying there by myself. So about 10 days into house sitting, I woke up at 4 a.m. and could hear something downstairs. Thinking I had somehow gone to bed and left the TV on, I went down to the lounge, but the TV was off. Very confused at this point, I wandered into the hall looking for the source of the sound. Both the dogs were sat very alertly outside the office door. Then I saw that light was coming from behind the office door. I have absolutely no explanation for what happened that night. The computer in the office is my brother's, and he had been sailing in Europe for 2 months at this point. And his computer was always password protected. However, on this night, the computer was on, unlocked. And the noise I could hear was a YouTube video about Soviet experiments of dog head transplants. I worked from home the next day, as I was so scared I'd come home to find my dog's heads had been switched. Edit. Commenter is correct. It was Soviet experiments, not Nazi. I was too scared to Google it again. When I was a senior in high school, a bunch of my friends and I used to drive into the hills to drink and get away from our parents. I was the DD one night and drove back 4 of my friends. 2 of the girls were really drunk and started puking, so we pulled over in a park. Both of the girls started puking outside my car doors. And then this pickup rolled up behind us and had its high beams on us. I thought it was the cops and was just waiting for them to bust us, but the person in the car just stayed there. Eventually we closed the doors and drove away. The pickup followed us. I started driving faster and through a neighborhood I knew really well, taking every turn and starting to speed up, but the pickup kept following us. Eventually my friends needed to puke again and we pulled over. The pickup stopped behind us and again just kept its lights on us. I looked through my rearview mirror and saw an older white guy with a beard. He started reaching for something in his glove compartment. At that point, I freaked out, told my friends to pull my other friends in the car, and floored it. We took a couple turns and lost the guy. We stayed in a driveway of a random person for like 15 minutes and then decided it was safe. We turned back onto the main street and the pickup truck was waiting for us. I drove as fast as I could down the main street and the pickup kept following us. Eventually at the bottom of a hill, there was a massive accident and a bunch of police cars and fire trucks. I started to slow down like I was going to pull over towards the police. The pickup overtook us, ran a red light in front of the cops, and I never saw him again. I have no idea who that guy was or what he wanted, but it was terrifying. Gather round, boys and ghouls, and I will tell you the chilling tale of the twisty tie lady. I have posted this once before, but figured I'd share it again. Apologies in advance for formatting. I'm on mobile. This happened about 12 years ago. I was still living at home in high school. My parents purchased a condo from a family friend, and we moved in. The lady family friend's mother we bought the condo from had passed away of natural causes inside the condo. She was an older lady, friendly from what I hear. She also dabbled in sorts of witchcraft and black magic. I don't believe she was casting evil spells on anyone, more of hobby, I suppose. So anyway, we move in. Most of her belongings were left behind, so my parents kept the stuff they needed. Mostly furniture and coffee tables. After months of living there, we had a suspicion that we weren't alone. Now, this wasn't your typical haunted house scenario. There were no flickering lights, strange noises, or lurking shadows that led us to this belief. It was twisty ties. Yes, just like the ones that come with the loaves of bread you buy from the store. Every now and then, we would find these strange twisty ties around the house. These random as twisty ties would seemingly appear out of thin air, almost strategically placed so they would be noticed. Like, I'd be hanging out on the couch watching TV, go to the kitchen to fetch a tasty beverage, and come back to find a stray twisty tie just chilling on the coffee table. We'd find them wrapped around cords, on countertops, in desk drawers, even one time wrapped around my toothbrush. Each one unique in the shape, color, and placement. It certainly wasn't a shit your pants moment, but over time living there, you'd start to look for it and anticipate it. There were 3 of us that lived there, and of course we all blamed each other, and of course none of us ever fessed up to it. Over the years, however, there were enough isolated instances each one of us had encountered to deny it. It was kind of fun, actually. We named her the Twisty Tie Lady, and I started to collect them in my nightstand drawer just for funsies. I always wondered why twisty ties. I tried extensive research on the web about twisty ties and if they had any significance in witchcraft, and found nothing. A few years later, after moving out, I had learned that when the lady was alive, it became a little inside joke between her and daughter, the family friend, to save all her twisty ties for further use. I guess that was her way of reaching out in the afterlife. Sadly, the condo complex had been wiped out from a flood. But to this day, every time I see a twisty tie, I smile. Told this story of my parents' old house when I was living with them before college. I live in a small cul-de-sac in the middle of nowhere. The next nearest neighborhood is over 4 miles away. One night a few years ago, we got over 1.5 feet of snow overnight. So far from main roads, and on the weekend, I knew our roads will remain unplowed for quite some time. I went to my out back deck door to look at the snow-draped trees and the still heavily falling flurries and take some pictures when I noticed footprints. leading to my door, then turning around and leaving. I looked and saw that they came from my neighbors. Sighed and thought that one of their more delinquent kids played a joke as my sledding tube on the railing was popped. I decided I'd wait till later as it was early to call their parents. I went on Facebook, and after scrolling for a bit, I noticed one of my neighbors closer to the entrance posted, "Did someone knock for me?" or something at my back door. I immediately called her, talked, and told her I have an idea. I called the first house on the entrance and told him what was going on. He went and checked, and sure enough, they were there too. Everyone started calling everyone else. I called the family at the far end, and they told me there was none there. Then I got a call from my next door neighbor. She called the woman that lives next to the end house. She said that there were footprints that led to her door, but none led away. We already called the police by this point, but now we called them back and said that it's an emergency now. They told us the roads are still all unplowed, and they can't send a plow truck to clear the way as they are a privately owned company. The woman was losing it, so one of the husbands, huge bear of a man, across the road from her texted her to say he was coming over to invite her over. He came, and she left. We put up one guy's live feed motion recording hunting cameras facing all exits. Nothing came out. Around 7 p.m. a plow truck came as well as 3 cop cars. The couple she was staying with and her went to her house and stood in the doorway as the police searched. They found nothing. She begged them to keep looking, so they did. 2 of the cops went into the basement again. This time only one came up. He took her to the side room, and we could hear hysterical crying. By now we are all out there. Me and a few of the other guys started towards the door when several police confronted us. They told us they found someone hiding under a cover opening in the stairwell that she didn't even know existed. A few minutes later, a scruffy man screaming and kicking came out in cuffs and was led away. In his little campout they found blankets she just cleaned and put away in the room next to hers. She stayed in other people's houses for a long time before going back. Even then she wouldn't stay alone. She sold the house the next summer. He turned out to be a thrill-seeking junkie who was on probation for assault against a family member. The cops told us that they feel like he didn't want to stay at his apartment after a fight with his roommate and drove off in his roommate's car from the county over and got stuck in our unplowed roads. And that is why you always make sure you locked your doors.